Maria Santos pushed her cleaning cart down the long hallway of the Harmony Conservatory. The wheels made a soft squeaking sound on the polished marble floor. It was almost 9 o'clock at night, and she was tired. Her feet hurt from standing all day, and her back ached from bending over to clean toilets and mop floors. She had been working at the music school for 3 years now. Every day was the same. She came to work at 5 in the evening when all the rich students went home. She cleaned their classrooms, emptied their trash cans, and wiped down their expensive instruments. The students never looked at her. To them, she was invisible. Tonight was different, though. There was a big party happening in the main concert hall. Rich people in fancy clothes were everywhere. The women wore shiny dresses and expensive jewelry. The men wore black suits and polished shoes. They all looked like they belonged in a magazine. Maria tried to stay out of their way. She knew she did not belong here with these people. Her uniform was old and had small stains on it. Her shoes were worn out from walking on hard floors every day. Her hands were rough and red from using cleaning chemicals. The party was for charity, she had heard someone say. These rich people came together once a year to give money to help poor children learn music. They ate fancy food, drank expensive wine, and felt good about helping others. Then they went back to their big houses and forgot about the poor children, until next year. Maria pushed her cart closer to the concert hall. She needed to clean the bathroom near the stage. The party was supposed to end at 8:30, but these people were still here. They were talking loudly and laughing. Some of them had drunk too much wine. She opened the door to the bathroom and started cleaning. She could hear the party through the thin walls. The people were talking about money, about their businesses, about their vacation homes. One woman was complaining that her son's piano teacher was not good enough. Another man was bragging about buying a new car that cost more than Maria made. In 5 years, Maria tried not to listen, but it was hard. These people had so much money and she had so little. She worked 2 jobs to pay rent for her small apartment. She had 2 children at home, Sophia, who was 12, and Diego, who was 10. They were probably doing homework right now, waiting for her to come home with dinner. After she finished the bathroom, Maria went to the main concert hall. The party was still going on, but it looked like it was ending soon. Some people were putting on their coats. Others were saying goodbye to their friends. The concert hall was beautiful. It had a high ceiling with fancy lights hanging down. The walls were painted gold and white. In the center of the room was a huge black piano. It was the most expensive piano Maria had ever seen. She had heard someone say it cost more than most people's houses. Maria had always loved music. When she was young, she dreamed of playing the piano. But her family was poor, and piano lessons cost too much money. She had to work instead of going to school. She had to help her mother take care of her younger brothers and sisters. Now she was 42 years old, and she still loved music. Sometimes, when she was cleaning the practice room, she would stop and listen to the students play. Their music made her feel happy and sad at the same time. Happy because it was beautiful, and sad because she knew she would never be able to play like that. Maria started to mop the floor around the piano. She moved carefully, trying not to make noise. She did not want to disturb the rich people who were still talking and drinking. As she worked, she noticed a group of men standing near the piano. They were all wearing expensive suits and gold watches. One man was taller than the others and had gray hair. He was talking loudly and pointing at different things in the room. The other men were laughing at everything he said. Maria tried to clean around them without getting in their way. But the tall man with gray hair noticed her. He looked at her uniform, at her cleaning cart, at her worn-out shoes. His eyes were cold and mean. Maria felt uncomfortable under his stare. She had seen that look before from rich people. It was the look that said she was not important, that she was just a poor cleaning lady who did not matter. She kept working, hoping the man would look away, but he did not. He kept staring at her, and now he was smiling. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who was thinking of something mean. The other men noticed where their friend was looking. They all turned to stare at Maria, too. She felt her face get hot with embarrassment. All she wanted to do was finish her work and go home to her children. But the tall man was not done with her yet. He walked closer to where she was mopping. His friends followed him. Maria could smell the expensive wine on their breath. "Look at this," the tall man said to his friends, but loud enough for other people to hear. "Our cleaning lady is working so hard." Maria did not look up. She kept mopping, hoping they would go away. But more people started to notice what was happening. The room got a little quieter as people turned to see what the tall man was talking about. "I wonder if she knows what this piano is," the man continued. He put his hand on the shiny black surface of the instrument. "This piano costs more money than she will make in her whole life." Maria's face burned with shame. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to run away from this room full of rich people who were now all looking at her. But she needed this job. She needed the money to feed her children and pay rent. "I bet she has never even touched a piano key," the man said, laughing. His friends laughed too. "I bet she does not even know how to read music." Maria finally looked up. The tall man was staring right at her with that mean smile. Behind him, she could see dozens of other rich people watching. Some looked uncomfortable, but no one said anything to stop him. Maria's heart was beating fast. Her hands were shaking a little as she held her mop. She knew this man was making fun of her, but she did not know why. She had never done anything to hurt him. She was just trying to do her job. The man seemed to be enjoying the attention he was getting. More and more people were gathering around to see what would happen next. The party had basically stopped, and everyone was looking at the tall man. And the poor cleaning lady. Maria wished she could become invisible again. She wished she could go back to being ignored. Being ignored was better than this. Being ignored was safer than having all these rich people stare at her like she was some kind of animal in a zoo. But she could not disappear. She was stuck in this moment in this room full of people who had more money in their wallets than she made in a month. And the tall man with the mean smile was not finished with her yet. Richard Blackstone looked around the room with satisfaction. Everyone was watching him now. He loved being the center of attention. He loved having power over other people. And right now, he had power over this poor cleaning woman who could not fight back. Richard was one of the richest men in the city. He owned a big technology company that made millions of dollars every year. He had 3 houses, 5 cars, and a private airplane. Money was never a problem for him. He could buy anything he wanted without even thinking about the cost. But Richard was not happy just being rich. He also liked to show other people that he was better than them. He liked to make others feel small, so he could feel big. Tonight, he had found the perfect target. "What is your name?" Richard asked Maria, but his voice was not kind. It was the voice of someone talking to a child or a pet. Maria looked up at him. Her eyes were scared, but she tried to be brave. "Maria," she said quietly. "Maria," Richard repeated, saying her name like it was funny. "Tell me, Maria, do you like music?" Maria nodded. She did not trust her voice to say words. "That's nice," Richard said with fake kindness. "Do you know what kind of piano this is, Maria?" Maria shook her head. She knew it was expensive, but she did not know the brand or model. "This is a Steinway Model D concert grand piano," Richard announced to the whole room. "It cost $300,000. That's probably more money than you will make in 10 years, isn't it, Maria?" Some people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. They could see that Richard was being mean, but no one wanted to speak up against him. Richard was too rich, too powerful. He gave money to the music school. He could destroy careers with one phone call. Maria felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she tried not to cry. She did not want to give this cruel man the satisfaction of seeing her break down. "You know what I think?" Richard continued, warming up to his cruel game. "I think it's sad that someone like Maria here has to work so hard just to survive, while this beautiful piano sits here mostly unused." He walked around the piano, running his finger along the smooth black surface. "This piano has been played by some of the greatest musicians in the world, famous pianists, talented students, gifted teachers, but I bet Maria here has never even touched it." Richard's friends were laughing nervously. They could see where this was going, and some of them were starting to feel uncomfortable, but they were too weak to stop their powerful friend. "You know what would be interesting?" Richard said, his eyes lighting up with a cruel idea. "What if we gave Maria a chance to experience something special tonight?" The room was completely quiet now. Everyone was listening, waiting to see what Richard would do next. Maria stood frozen, still holding her mop, wishing she could run away. "I have an idea," Richard announced loudly. "Let's play a little game." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his checkbook. It was a leather checkbook with gold corners, the kind that only very rich people carry. "Maria," Richard said, "I want to make you an offer. A business proposition, you might say." Maria did not understand what was happening. She just wanted this terrible moment to end so she could go back to cleaning and then go home to her children. "Here's what I'm thinking," Richard continued. "This room is full of generous people who came here tonight to give money to charity. We all want to help poor children learn music, right?" Some people in the crowd nodded. They were confused about where Richard was going with this. "So here's my offer, Maria," Richard said with a big fake smile. "I will write a check for $10,000 to the music school's charity fund. $10,000 to help poor children learn to play instruments." This sounded good to Maria, but she could tell there was something bad coming next. Rich people never gave away money for free. "But," Richard continued, holding up one finger, "there's one small condition." "Here it comes," thought Maria. "Here comes the trap." Richard walked closer to Maria until he was standing right in front of her. She could smell his expensive cologne mixed with the wine on his breath. "All you have to do," Richard said loudly so everyone could hear, "is sit down at this piano and play one note. Just one single note. Any note you want. Press any key on this $300,000 piano, and I will give $10,000 to charity." The room was dead silent. Everyone understood now what Richard was doing. He was trying to humiliate this poor woman by making her touch an expensive piano that she did not know how to play. He expected her to be too scared or too proud to do it. Or maybe he expected her to try and then feel embarrassed when she could not play real music. Richard's friends were smiling now. They thought this was funny. They thought it would be entertaining to watch this cleaning lady struggle with something so far above her social class. "What do you think, Maria?" Richard asked with fake concern. "It's very simple. Just one note and $10,000 goes to help poor children. Surely you want to help poor children, don't you?" This was the cruelest part of his game. He was making it sound like Maria would be selfish if she said no. He was making it seem like she would be taking money away from poor children if she refused to humiliate herself. Maria looked around the room. Dozens of rich people were staring at her, waiting to see what she would do. Some looked excited, like they were about to watch a good show. Others looked uncomfortable but did nothing to help her. "Of course," Richard continued, "I understand if you're too scared. This piano is very expensive, very delicate. Maybe you're worried you might break something." Now he was giving her an excuse to back down, but it was an excuse that would make her look weak and cowardly. Either way, she would be humiliated. "Or maybe," Richard said with a cruel laugh, "maybe you don't think $10,000 is enough money to help poor children. Maybe you think the charity should get more money." This was another trap. If Maria asked for more money, she would look greedy. If she said $10,000 was enough, she would have to accept his challenge. "Tell you what," Richard said, pretending to be generous, "I'm feeling good tonight. If you play one note on this piano, I'll make it $15,000. Some people in the crowd gasped. $15,000 was a lot of money. It could help many poor children learn music. $15,000, Maria, Richard repeated. All for pressing one key on a piano. It's the easiest money anyone has ever made. What do you say? Maria looked at the piano. It was beautiful and perfect. She looked at Richard with his mean smile and his expensive suit. She looked at all the rich people watching her like she was entertainment at a circus. She thought about her children at home. She thought about how hard she worked every day just to pay for food and rent. She thought about all the times she had listened to beautiful music in the practice rooms and wished she could play too. Well? Richard asked impatiently. We don't have all night, Maria. Do you want to help poor children or not? The question hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Everyone waited to see what the poor cleaning lady would do when faced with the rich man's cruel game. Maria stood perfectly still, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes in the room. The silence was so complete that she could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Richard Blackstone's challenge hung in the air like a thick fog that made it hard to breathe. $15,000. It was more money than Maria made in 8 months of cleaning toilets and mopping floors. It was enough money to buy her children new clothes for school, to pay for Sophia's glasses that she desperately needed, to fix the broken heater in their apartment that made winter nights so cold. But Maria knew this was not really about helping poor children learn music. This was about Richard Blackstone having fun at her expense. This was about showing everyone in the room the difference between the rich people in fancy clothes and the poor woman with the mop. "Come on, Maria," Richard said with fake encouragement. "It's just one note. Even a child can press a piano key. Surely you're not afraid of a simple piano." Some people in the crowd started to whisper among themselves. Maria caught pieces of their conversations. "This is cruel," she heard one woman say quietly. "Someone should stop this," whispered a man in a dark suit. But no one moved to help her. No one told Richard to leave her alone. They all just watched and waited to see what would happen next. Richard walked around the piano, running his hand along its perfect surface. "You know, Maria, this piano has been played by some of the greatest musicians who ever lived. Carnegie Hall has one just like it. The finest concert halls in Europe have pianos exactly like this one." He paused and looked directly at her. "But tonight you could be the one to play it. Tonight you could touch the same keys that have been touched by musical geniuses." Richard was making it sound like he was offering her a wonderful gift, but Maria could hear the mockery in his voice. He expected her to be clumsy and awkward. He expected her to press a key and make an ugly sound that would make everyone laugh. "Of course," Richard continued, "if you don't want to help the poor children, I understand. Not everyone cares about charity." This made Maria angry. She did care about poor children. She was one of the poor people. Her own children were poor. Every day she struggled to give them what they needed. I care about children," Maria said, quietly. "I'm sorry, what?" Richard cupped his ear like he could not hear her. "Could you speak up? I don't think everyone heard you." "I said I care about children," Maria repeated louder this time. "Good." Richard clapped his hands together. "Then we have a deal. One note on the piano, and $15,000 goes to help poor children learn music." He pulled out his checkbook again and held it up for everyone to see. "I'll write the check right now in front of all these witnesses. All you have to do is walk over to that piano and press one key." Maria looked at the piano again. It seemed so far away, even though it was only a few steps from where she stood. The black surface gleamed under the fancy lights. The keys looked perfect and white, like teeth in a beautiful smile. She had dreamed of playing piano since she was a little girl. Her grandmother used to tell her stories about great pianists who could make people cry with their music. Maria used to pretend she was playing piano, moving her fingers on an invisible keyboard while humming songs in her head. "What's it going to be, Maria?" Richard asked. "Are you going to help the children or are you going to walk away?" The crowd pressed closer, eager to see what would happen. Maria felt trapped, like an animal surrounded by hunters. Every direction she looked, she saw faces staring at her, waiting for her to do something that would entertain them. Richard checked his expensive watch. "I don't mean to rush you, but some of us have important places to be. This is a very generous offer, but it won't last forever." Now he was adding time pressure to make her feel even more stressed. Maria's hands were shaking as she held her mop. Her uniform felt dirty and ugly compared to all the beautiful clothes around her. "Maybe she's scared she'll break something," said one of Richard's friends with a nasty laugh. "Those pianos are very delicate. Or maybe she doesn't know which end of the piano makes the music," said another friend. The group of rich men laughed at their own jokes. They were having fun watching Maria suffer. To them, this was better than any movie or television show. But not everyone was laughing. Maria noticed that some people in the crowd looked uncomfortable. An older woman with gray hair was frowning at Richard. A young man in a tuxedo was shaking his head. Even some of Richard's own friends seemed to realize that this game had gone too far. Still, no one spoke up to defend her. No one told Richard to stop. They all just watched and waited. "Tell you what," Richard said suddenly. "I can see that you're nervous, Maria, so I'm going to make this even easier for you." He walked to the piano bench and pulled it out from under the keyboard. "You don't even have to sit down properly. Just walk over here, reach out one finger, and press any key you want. Black key, white key, it doesn't matter. Just make one sound, and the money is yours. Well, the charity's money." Richard sat down on the bench himself to demonstrate. "Like this," he said, pressing a key in the middle of the keyboard. A single, pure note filled the concert hall. "See? Nothing to it. Even a child could do it." He stood up and gestured toward the bench like he was a game show host. "Your turn, Maria. $15,000 is waiting." Maria set her mop against her cleaning cart. Her legs felt weak as she took a step toward the piano. The crowd seemed to hold its breath. Some people had their phones out, ready to record what they thought would be an embarrassing moment. "That's it," Richard encouraged with false kindness. "Just a few more steps." Maria walked slowly toward the piano. Each step felt like it took forever. The beautiful instrument grew larger as she got closer. She could see her reflection in its shiny black surface, a tired woman in a cleaning uniform, surrounded by rich people in designer clothes. When she reached the piano, Maria stopped. She was close enough now to touch it, close enough to press a key and claim the money for charity, close enough to give Richard exactly what he wanted: the sight of a poor cleaning lady trying to do something above her station in life. "Go ahead," Richard said softly. "Just one note." Maria raised her hand slowly toward the keyboard. The crowd was completely silent now, watching her every move. She could feel their eyes burning into her back. Her finger hovered over a white key in the middle of the piano. All she had to do was press down, and this horrible moment would be over. She would have helped poor children, and she could go back to being invisible. But something inside Maria rebelled against what was happening. Something deep in her heart refused to be treated like a circus animal performing tricks for the amusement of rich people. She had worked hard her whole life. She had sacrificed everything for her children. She deserved better than this cruel game, even if she was just a cleaning lady. Maria's finger was still hovering over the key when she finally understood the choice she was really facing. This was not about helping children or playing piano. This was about whether she would let this cruel man strip away her dignity in front of all these people. The room waited in complete silence to see what she would do. Maria's finger trembled as it hovered over the white piano key. The silence in the room was so deep that she could hear the soft breathing of the crowd behind her. Every person in that elegant concert hall was waiting to see what the poor cleaning woman would do. Richard Blackstone stood beside her with his arms crossed, that cruel smile still on his face. He was enjoying every second of this. In his mind, he had already won. Either Maria would press the key and look foolish, or she would walk away and look like she didn't care about helping poor children. Both outcomes would amuse him. "Any time. Now, Maria," Richard said quietly. "The children are waiting." But something strange was happening to Maria as she stood there beside the beautiful piano. The longer she looked at the keys, the more familiar they seemed. The black and white pattern was like an old friend she hadn't seen in years. Her hand stopped shaking. Maria thought about her grandmother, who used to clean houses for rich families when Maria was small. Grandma Elena had told her stories about the big houses she cleaned, with their fancy furniture and expensive paintings. But Grandma Elena had also told her something else. "Mija," her grandmother used to say, "rich people think that money makes them better than us. But inside we are all the same. We all have the same heart, the same dreams, the same feelings. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small because you have less money." Maria remembered those words now as she stood in front of this piano worth more than her entire apartment. She remembered her grandmother's strong hands, roughened by years of cleaning other people's homes. Those hands had been beautiful because they worked hard to feed a family. Maria looked down at her own hands. They were rough too, marked by years of scrubbing floors and washing dishes. But they were strong hands. They were hands that had worked for everything she had ever gotten in life. She wiped her hands on her uniform one more time. It was an old habit, something she did when she was nervous. But this time, it felt different. She was not trying to hide her rough hands anymore. She was preparing them for something important. The crowd was getting restless. Some people were checking their watches. Others were whispering to each other about how long this was taking. Richard's friends were starting to look bored. "Come on. Maria," Richard said with fake patience. "We don't have all night, just press the key." But Maria was not listening to Richard anymore. She was listening to something else. A memory that was coming back to her like sunlight breaking through clouds. She sat down on the piano bench slowly and carefully. The bench was the perfect height, and when she placed her feet on the floor, her posture felt natural and comfortable. Her back straightened and her shoulders relaxed. This surprised some people in the crowd. They had expected her to look awkward and out of place sitting at such an expensive instrument. Instead, she looked like she belonged there. Richard frowned. This was not going the way he had planned. The cleaning lady was supposed to look scared and clumsy. Instead, she looked calm and focused. "Just one note, remember," Richard said quickly. "That's all we agreed on." Maria placed her hands gently on her knees and took a deep breath. She looked at the keyboard in front of her. 88 keys, black and white, arranged in the same pattern she had memorized as a young girl. She remembered now. She remembered everything. When Maria was 17 years old, she had worked as a cleaning girl for the Mendoza family. They were rich people who lived in a big house on the hill overlooking the city. Maria cleaned their floors and washed their dishes to help her family pay for food and rent. But the Mendoza family had been different from other rich people. Mrs. Mendoza had been kind to Maria. She had noticed that Maria always stopped to listen when her daughter practiced piano. She had seen how Maria's eyes lit up when music filled the house. "Do you like music, Maria?" Mrs. Mendoza had asked one day. Maria had nodded shyly. She was afraid to say too much to her employer. "Would you like to learn?" Mrs. Mendoza had asked, and so for 2 years Maria had learned to play piano. Mrs. Mendoza had paid for lessons with her daughter's teacher. Maria had practiced on their piano every day after she finished her cleaning work. She had been a fast learner, hungry for music, like a person dying of thirst is hungry for water. But then Mrs. Mendoza had gotten sick. Very sick. The family had spent all their money on doctors and medicine. They had to sell their big house and let Maria go. Mrs. Mendoza had died 6 months later, and Maria had never touched a piano again. That was 25 years ago. Maria had buried those memories deep inside her heart. She had convinced herself that music was not for people like her. She had focused on survival, on working hard to feed her children and keep a roof over their heads. But now, sitting at this piano in front of all these rich people, the memories came flooding back. Her fingers remembered the feel of the keys. Her ears remembered the sound of beautiful music. Her heart remembered the joy of creating something perfect and pure. Maria placed her hands on the keyboard. Her fingers found their positions automatically, like they had been waiting all these years for this moment. She closed her eyes and let herself remember Mrs. Mendoza's kind voice. "Music is not about money, Maria," Mrs. Mendoza had said. "Music is about the soul, and your soul is as beautiful as anyone's." The crowd behind Maria was growing impatient. Richard was tapping his foot and checking his watch. His friends were making jokes about how long it was taking. "Just press one key already," someone called out from the back of the room. But Maria was not thinking about the crowd anymore. She was not thinking about Richard's cruel game or his $15,000. She was thinking about Mrs. Mendoza, who had believed in her. She was thinking about her grandmother, who had taught her to be proud. She was thinking about her children at home, who deserved a mother who was not afraid to show who she really was. Maria opened her eyes and looked at the piano keys. They seemed to glow under the lights. Each key was perfect and clean, waiting to make music. She thought about pressing just one key, as Richard had demanded. She could hit a single note, collect the money for charity, and end this horrible evening. That would be the safe thing to do. the expected thing to do. But Maria had been playing it safe her whole life. She had been hiding who she really was for 25 years. She had been invisible for so long that she had almost forgotten she existed. Not tonight. Tonight, Maria Santos was going to remember who she used to be. Before life made her afraid. Before poverty made her feel small. Before cruel people like Richard Blackstone made her believe she was not worth anything. Maria's fingers moved to their starting position on the keyboard. She could feel the smooth surface of the keys under her fingertips. She could feel 25 years of buried dreams rising up in her chest like birds taking flight. The room fell completely silent as everyone realized something was about to happen. Something more than just pressing one key. Something that might change everything. Maria's hands moved across the keyboard with the grace of a dancer and the precision of a surgeon. Instead of pressing just one key as Richard had demanded, her fingers began to play the opening notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor. One of the most difficult and beautiful pieces ever written for piano. The first notes filled the concert hall like liquid gold. Each sound was perfect, clear, and full of emotion. The melody was so beautiful that it seemed to stop time itself. Richard Blackstone's cruel smile vanished from his face. His mouth fell open in shock as he stared at Maria's hands moving across the keys with impossible skill. This was not what he had planned. This was not what he had expected. The crowd behind Maria gasped as one. The whispered conversation stopped completely. Even the people who had been looking at their phones put them down and stared in amazement at the cleaning woman who was playing like a concert pianist. But Maria did not hear the gasps. She did not see the shocked faces. She was lost in the music, in the memories, in the pure joy of playing piano again after 25 years of silence. Her fingers remembered every note, every phrase, every delicate touch needed to make the piano sing. It was like riding a bicycle or swimming. Something the body never forgets even after years of not practicing. The music grew more complex as Maria moved through the piece. Her left hand played deep, rolling bass notes while her right hand danced through intricate melodies high on the keyboard. The sound filled every corner of the concert hall, reaching every heart in the room. Some people in the crowd had tears in their eyes. The music was so beautiful, so unexpected, so perfect, that it moved them in ways they had not felt in years. This was not just good playing. This was art of the highest level. Richard tried to interrupt. "Wait, that's not what we agreed," he started to say. But his voice was drowned out by the piano. Maria played louder now with more confidence. Her whole body moved with the music. Her head swayed gently. Her shoulders relaxed. Her feet worked. The pedals with expert timing. This was not the scared cleaning woman who had been mopping floors a few minutes ago. This was a completely different person. Confident, talented, and totally in control of her art. The piece Maria was playing told a story. It started softly, almost sadly, like someone remembering a lost love. Then it grew stronger, more passionate, as if the memories were bringing both joy and pain. The melody twisted and turned, rose and fell like the human heart itself. As Maria played, the memories came flooding back even stronger. She remembered her first piano lesson with Mrs. Mendoza's teacher. She remembered the thrill of learning a new piece. She remembered the hours she had spent practicing, losing herself in the beautiful sounds. She also remembered the day she had to stop playing. The day Mrs. Mendoza got sick. The day the music died in her life and she had to focus only on survival. But the music had never really died. It had been sleeping inside her all these years, waiting for the right moment to wake up. Tonight, thanks to Richard's cruel game, that moment had finally come. The difficulty of the piece Maria was playing became more obvious as she continued. Her hands moved with lightning speed across the keyboard. Her fingers hit every note perfectly, even in the most complicated passages. This was not beginner's luck or simple talent. This was the result of years of serious study and practice. People in the crowd began to whisper to each other. How is this possible? Where did she learn to play like this? This is professional level playing. She's better than most of our students. Dr. Helena Winters, the director of the music school, pushed through the crowd to get closer to the piano. She was a small woman with gray hair who had spent her whole life around music and musicians. She could recognize great talent when she heard it. As Dr. Winters listened to Maria play, her eyes grew wide with amazement. She knew this piece well. It was one of the most challenging in all of piano literature. Most professional pianists struggled with it, but Maria was playing it like she had performed it 100 times before. "My God," Dr. Winters whispered to herself. "Who is this woman?" Richard Blackstone was no longer smiling. He was no longer enjoying his cruel game. Instead, he looked confused and angry. This was not supposed to happen. The cleaning lady was supposed to press one key and look foolish. She was not supposed to play like a concert pianist and make him look like an idiot. "Stop," Richard said loudly. "This isn't what we agreed on." But Maria could not hear him over the music. Or maybe she could hear him but chose not to listen. She was in her own world now, a world where cruel rich men could not hurt her, where she was not a poor cleaning lady but an artist creating beauty. The music reached its most dramatic section. Maria's hands flew across the keyboard with incredible speed and accuracy. The melody soared up into the highest notes of the piano, then crashed down into the deepest bass notes. The sound was like thunder and lightning mixed with angels singing. Some people in the crowd started to cry openly. Others stood with their mouths hanging open in shock. A few began to clap quietly, unable to contain their appreciation for what they were hearing. But most just listened in stunned silence as this impossible thing happened before their eyes. A woman they had thought was just a cleaning lady was playing piano better than most people they had ever heard. As the piece moved toward its ending, Maria played with even more emotion. 25 years of buried dreams poured out through her fingers. All the sadness of giving up music, all the pain of working jobs she hated, all the longing for something beautiful in her hard life. It all came out in the music. The final notes of the piece were soft and gentle, like a whisper or a kiss goodbye. Maria played them with such tenderness that the entire room seemed to hold its breath. When the last note faded into silence, Maria sat perfectly still at the piano. Her hands remained on the keys, as if she could not bear to let go of this moment. Her eyes were closed and there were tears on her cheeks. The concert hall was completely quiet for several long seconds. No one seemed to know what to say or do. They had just witnessed something impossible, something that changed everything they thought they knew about the world. Then, slowly, Dr. Winters began to clap. Her applause echoed in the silent room like gunshots. One by one, other people joined her until the entire crowd was applauding thunderously. But Richard Blackstone was not clapping. He stood frozen beside the piano, staring at Maria with a mixture of shock, confusion, and growing anger. His cruel game had backfired completely, and he did not like losing control of any situation. Maria finally opened her eyes and lifted her hands from the keyboard. She turned to face the crowd, and for the first time all evening she was not afraid of their stares. She had found herself again. She had remembered who she really was. The applause seemed to go on forever. People were not just clapping politely. They were cheering, shouting, and wiping tears from their eyes. Maria sat at the piano, overwhelmed by the response. For 25 years, no one had heard her play music. Now hundreds of people were celebrating her talent. Dr. Helena Winters was the first to reach Maria. The elderly director of the music school had tears streaming down her face as she approached the piano bench. "My dear," Dr. Winters said, softly, "that was extraordinary. Where did you learn to play like that?" Maria looked up at Dr. Winters with eyes still wet from tears. She had been invisible for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to have someone really see her. I learned a long time ago," Maria said quietly. The crowd was still applauding, but people were also pressing closer to hear what Maria would say. Everyone wanted to understand how a cleaning woman could play piano like a professional musician. Richard Blackstone pushed through the crowd, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "This is ridiculous," he said loudly. "That's not what we Agreed on. You were supposed to play one note, not show off with some fancy piece. But the crowd turned on Richard immediately. The same people who had watched his cruel game in silence now glared at him with disgust. "Shut up, Richard," said a woman in a silver dress. "Can't you see something amazing just happened?" "Let her speak," said a man in a tuxedo. "We want to hear her story." Richard's friends, who had been laughing at his jokes earlier, now looked embarrassed to be associated with him. They took small steps away from him, trying to disappear into the crowd. Dr. Winters took Maria's hands in her own. The old woman's hands were soft and gentle, while Maria's were still rough from cleaning chemicals. But Dr. Winters held them like they were precious treasures. "Please," Dr. Winters said, "tell us about yourself. How long have you been able to play like this?" Maria looked around at all the faces watching her. Some were kind and encouraging, like Dr. Winters. Others were just curious. A few still looked shocked that a cleaning woman could possess such incredible talent. "I learned when I was young," Maria began, her voice getting stronger as she spoke. "I worked for a family, the Mendozas. Mrs. Mendoza was very kind to me. She saw that I loved music, so she paid for piano lessons." "How long did you study?" Dr. Winters asked gently. 2 years, Maria said. "I practiced every day after I finished, cleaning their house. Mrs. Mendoza said I learned faster than any student her daughter's teacher had ever seen." The crowd was completely quiet now, hanging on every word of Maria's story. "What happened?" someone asked. "Why did you stop playing?" Maria's eyes filled with tears again. "Mrs. Mendoza got very sick, cancer. The family spent all their money, trying to save her, but she died anyway. They had to sell their house and move away. I never touched a piano again. Until tonight," Dr. Winters said softly. "Until tonight," Maria agreed. A young woman in the crowd raised her hand like she was in school. "How long ago was that?" 25 years, Maria said. "I have not played piano in 25 years, the crowd gasped. They had just heard someone play one of the most difficult pieces in classical music perfectly, and she had not practiced. In 25 years, it seemed impossible. "But how did you remember?" asked an older man. "How did you play so beautifully after all this time?" Maria touched the piano keys gently with one finger. "I never forgot. Every day for 25 years I heard music in my head. When I cleaned the practice rooms here at the school, I would listen to the students play, and I would remember." Dr. Winters was staring at Maria with amazement. "You work here? At the conservatory?" Maria nodded. 3 years now. I clean the classrooms and practice rooms at night after the students go home." 3 years, Dr. Winters repeated. "You've been here for 3 years and we never knew you could play." "I never told anyone," Maria said. "Who would believe that a cleaning lady could play classical music?" Richard Blackstone, who had been silent during this conversation, suddenly spoke up again. "This is all very touching," he said sarcastically, "but it doesn't change anything. She still just pressed more than one key. That's not what we agreed on." The crowd turned to stare at Richard with open disgust. Several people started talking at once. "Are you serious right now? How can you be so cruel? Don't you understand what just happened?" But Richard was too proud and too angry to back down. "A deal is a deal," he said loudly. "I said I would give $15,000 if she played one note. She played thousands of notes. The deal is off." Dr. Winters stood up and faced Richard with fire in her eyes. Despite being a small, elderly woman, she looked fierce and powerful. "Mr. Blackstone," she said in a voice that could freeze water, "you have just witnessed something miraculous. This woman has more musical talent in her little finger than you have in your entire body. And all you can think about is your stupid game?" Richard's face got even redder. He was not used to being criticized, especially not by women or people he considered beneath him. "Now wait just a minute," he started to say. But Dr. Winters was not finished. "For 3 years we have had one of the most gifted musicians I have ever encountered working in our building, and we never knew it because she was just the cleaning lady. Do you understand how tragic that is? Do you understand what we almost lost?" Maria tried to speak. "Dr. Winters, it's okay, I don't need his money. No, Maria, it is not okay, Dr. Winters said firmly. Nothing about this situation is okay. She turned back to Richard. You came here tonight pretending to care about helping poor children learn music, but when faced with someone who truly understands the power of music, someone who has kept her love of art alive despite 25 years of hardship, all you can do is worry about the terms of your cruel little game. Other people in the crowd began to speak up. She's right, Richard, you should be ashamed. That woman is an artist. Show some respect. I've never heard playing like that in my life. Richard looked around and realized that everyone in the room was against him now. The same people who had laughed at his jokes and complimented his wealth were now looking at him like he was something disgusting they had found on the bottom of their shoes. But Maria surprised everyone by standing up and walking toward Richard. The crowd parted to let her through. When she reached him, she looked him straight in the eyes. Mr. Blackstone, she said calmly, you don't owe me anything. You made an offer, and I chose not to accept it the way you meant it. That's my choice, not yours. Richard stared at her, confused by her quiet dignity. But I want you to know something, Maria continued. For 3 years, I have cleaned up after you and people like you. I have emptied your trash cans and scrubbed your toilets, and the whole time you never once saw me as a real person with dreams and talents and feelings. The room was completely silent as Maria spoke. Tonight you tried to humiliate me for your own entertainment. But instead you gave me back something I thought was lost forever. You gave me back my music, so in a way I should thank you. Richard did not know what to say. He had never heard a poor person speak to him with such confidence and grace. Maria turned back to the crowd. The music is still inside me, she said with wonder in her voice. After all these years, it's still there. The applause that followed Maria's words was different from before. It was not just appreciation for her musical talent. It was respect for her dignity and strength. People were clapping for the woman who had just shown them what true grace looked like in the face of cruelty. Dr. Winters wiped tears from her eyes and took Maria's hands again. Maria, I need to ask you something very important. Would you be willing to play for us again, perhaps something else? Maria looked surprised. You want to hear more? My dear, Dr. Winters said with a smile, I have been running this music school for 30 years. I have heard thousands of students play, but what you just did, that was something special. That was art of the highest level. The crowd murmured their agreement. People were nodding and calling out encouragement. Please play something else, we want to hear more. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Maria looked around at all the eager faces. These were the same people who had ignored her for 3 years while she cleaned their building. Now they were looking at her like she was the most important person in the room. I don't know, Maria said hesitantly. It's been so long. Maybe that piece was just lucky. There's no such thing as luck when it comes to playing Chopin, said a man in the crowd who had introduced himself earlier as a music professor. What you did requires years of training and natural talent. Richard Blackstone, who had been standing silently in the corner, suddenly stepped forward again. His face was still red, but now he looked desperate instead of angry. Look, he said, loudly, trying to regain control of the situation. This has all been very interesting, but let's not get carried away so she can play piano, big deal. That doesn't change what she is. The room went completely silent. Everyone stared at Richard in shock. Even his own friends looked embarrassed by what he had just said. And what exactly is she, Mr. Blackstone? Dr. Winters asked in a voice like ice. Richard realized he had made a mistake, but he was too proud to back down. She's the cleaning lady, he said stubbornly. She mops floors and empties trash cans. Playing one piece of music doesn't change that. The silence that followed was so complete that you could hear people breathing. Then, slowly, people began to respond. You're disgusting, said a woman in a red dress. How dare you, said a young man. Someone with that attitude doesn't belong here, said another voice. But it was Maria herself who responded most powerfully. She walked closer to Richard and looked him straight in the eyes. You're right, she said calmly. I am the cleaning lady. I do mop floors and empty trash cans, and I am proud of that work." Richard looked confused. This was not the response he had expected. "I work hard every day to take care of my children," Maria continued. "I earn my money honestly. I treat people with respect, even when they don't treat me the same way." She paused and looked around the room. "But you know what else I am, Mr. Blackstone? I am a musician. I am an artist. I am a woman with dreams and talents and a heart full of music." The crowd was hanging on every word. "And the beautiful thing about music," Maria said with a smile, "is that it doesn't care how much money you have or what job you do. Music only cares about truth and beauty in the human spirit." She turned back to the piano. "You wanted to humiliate me by making me play one note. But music cannot be humiliated. Art cannot be made small by small people." Dr. Winters started clapping again, and soon the entire room joined in. But this time, they were not just clapping for Maria's music. They were clapping for her courage and wisdom. "Maria," Dr. Winters said when the applause died down, "I have a proposition for you. A real one, not a cruel game." Maria looked at her with curiosity. "I would like to offer you a full scholarship to complete your musical education here at the conservatory," Dr. Winters said. "And I would like to offer you a job teaching piano to our younger students." The crowd gasped. A full scholarship to the Harmony Conservatory was worth more than $100,000. It was the kind of opportunity that most musicians could only dream about. Maria stared at Dr. Winters in shock. I don't understand. I'm 42 years old. I haven't studied music in 25 years. I have children to support." "Age doesn't matter when it comes to talent like yours," Dr. Winters said firmly. "And we can arrange your teaching schedule around your family responsibilities. Your children could even attend our youth programs for free." "But I'm just a cleaning lady," Maria said, using Richard's words. Dr. Winters smiled. "You are a musician who happens to work as a cleaning lady. There's a big difference." A man in the crowd stepped forward. He was wearing an expensive suit and had gray hair. "Excuse me," he said. "I'm Robert Chen. I run the City Symphony Orchestra. I'm sorry, I don't know your last name." "Santos," Maria said quietly. "Maria Santos." "Ms. Santos," Robert Chen continued, "I would like to invite you to audition for our orchestra. We're always looking for talented pianists." Another woman stepped forward. "I'm Jennifer Walsh from Classical Music Magazine. I would love to do a story about you if you're interested." More people began to approach Maria with offers and opportunities. Record producers, concert managers, music teachers. They all wanted to work with the cleaning lady who could play piano like an angel. Maria looked overwhelmed by all the attention. I don't know what to say. This is all happening so fast." Dr. Winters put her arm around Maria's shoulders. "You don't have to decide everything tonight, dear. But I want you to know that your life has just changed forever." Meanwhile, Richard Blackstone was trying to leave without anyone noticing. But several people blocked his path. "Where are you going, Richard?" asked a woman he had been talking to earlier. "Don't you want to congratulate Maria on her success?" Richard's face was red with embarrassment and anger. His cruel game had not only failed, it had made him look like a fool in front of everyone he knew. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "She's still just a cleaning lady who got lucky." But no one was listening to him anymore. All attention was focused on Maria, who was sitting at the piano again, playing soft, beautiful melodies while people gathered around to listen. Richard realized that he had lost more than just a game tonight. He had lost respect. He had lost friends. And he had lost his reputation. All because he had tried to humiliate a woman who turned out to be more talented and dignified than he could ever hope to be. As Richard finally managed to push his way out of the concert hall, he could hear Maria's music following him. The beautiful sound seemed to mock him, reminding him of how badly he had misjudged the situation. Inside the hall, Maria continued to play for the crowd that had gathered around her. For the first time in 25 years, she was not invisible. She was not just a cleaning lady. She was an artist sharing her gift with people who could appreciate it. And in that moment, surrounded by music and kind faces and new possibilities, Maria Santos felt like the richest person in the world. 3 months later, Maria Santos walked through the front doors of the Harmony Conservatory as a student, not a cleaning lady. She carried a leather music bag filled with sheet music instead of a cart filled with cleaning supplies. Her worn uniform had been replaced by simple but clean clothes that made her feel confident and comfortable. The transformation had not happened overnight. The days following that incredible evening had been like a whirlwind of phone calls, meetings, and decisions that would change her life forever. True to his word, even though he had been humiliated, Richard Blackstone had written the check for $15,000 to the conservatory's charity fund. Dr. Winters had made sure the local newspaper wrote about his donation, though the story focused more on Maria's amazing performance than on Richard's generosity. Richard himself had largely disappeared from the social scene. The video of that evening, recorded by several people on their phones, had spread across social media. Millions of people had watched the cruel millionaire get embarrassed by the talented cleaning lady. Richard's reputation was ruined, and his business had suffered as customers and partners distanced themselves from him. But Maria rarely thought about Richard anymore. She was too busy rebuilding her life around music. Dr. Winters had kept every promise she had made that night. Maria was enrolled as a special student in the conservatory's adult education program. Because of her exceptional talent, she was allowed to skip many of the beginner classes and go straight to advanced study. The scholarship covered not just her tuition, but also private lessons with the school's best teachers. Maria studied piano technique, music theory, composition, and performance. After 25 years away from formal music education, she absorbed knowledge like a dry sponge absorbs water. Her teaching job had started immediately. Maria taught piano to children aged 6 to 16, and she discovered that she loved teaching almost as much as she loved playing. Her students adored her because she understood what it was like to struggle, to work hard for everything you got, and to never give up on your dreams. The best part was that Sofia and Diego, Maria's children, were now enrolled in the conservatory's youth program for free. Sofia was learning violin, and Diego was studying drums. For the first time in their lives, they were getting the kind of education that Maria had always dreamed of giving them. Maria had also kept her promise to never forget where she came from. With some of the money she earned from teaching and the small concerts she had begun giving, she started the Elena Santos Foundation, named after her grandmother. The foundation provided music lessons and instruments to children from poor families. Every week, Maria volunteered at community centers and schools in the poorest parts of the city. She taught piano to children who reminded her of herself at their age, hungry for beauty and art but without the money to pay for lessons. Music belongs to everyone, Maria would tell her students. It doesn't matter if you live in a mansion or a tiny apartment. Music only cares about your heart. The foundation had grown quickly. Wealthy donors, inspired by Maria's story, contributed money and instruments. Music teachers volunteered their time. Within 3 months, the Elena Santos Foundation was teaching music to more than 200 children. Maria's personal success had been equally amazing. The story of the cleaning lady who shocked everyone with her piano playing had spread far beyond their city. She had been invited to give concerts in other cities, and a recording company had offered her a contract to make an album. But the most meaningful success was much simpler. Maria was happy. For the first time in 25 years, she woke up each morning excited about her day. She was using her talents, helping others, and providing a good life for her children. One evening, as Maria was leaving the conservatory after teaching her last student of the day, she ran into Dr. Winters in the hallway. "Maria," Dr. Winters said with a warm smile, "how are your composition classes going?" "Wonderful," Maria replied. "Professor Martinez says I have a natural ear for harmony." "I'm not surprised," Dr. Winters said. "You know, I've been thinking about that night 3 months ago, about what Richard Blackstone tried to do to you." Maria nodded. She thought about that night often, but not with anger or sadness. She thought about it with gratitude. "In his own twisted way," Dr. Winters continued, "he did you a favor. If he hadn't played that cruel game, we might never have discovered your talent." I know, Maria said. I've thought about that too. Sometimes bad things happen that turn out to be good things in disguise. Dr. Winters smiled. You're a wise woman, Maria. Much wiser than certain wealthy men I could mention. They walked together toward the exit. As they passed the main concert hall where everything had changed that night, Maria stopped and looked through the open doors. The same beautiful piano sat in the center of the room. Do you ever regret it? Dr. Winters asked. Giving up your quiet, simple life for all this attention and pressure? Maria thought for a moment. Never, she said firmly. I was dying inside, Dr. Winters. I was so focused on just surviving that I forgot I was supposed to be living. She looked at the piano again. Music saved me. It brought me back to life. And you've used that life to save others, Dr. Winters said. The foundation, your students, your own children. You're giving them the gift that Mrs. Mendoza gave to you all those years ago. As they walked out into the evening air, Maria thought about Mrs. Mendoza, the kind woman who had believed in a young cleaning girl's dreams. She thought about her grandmother, Elena, who had taught her to be strong and proud. She thought about her children, who were now growing up in a world full of possibilities. Most of all, she thought about music, the invisible thread that connected all the most beautiful moments in her life. 6 months later, Maria gave her first major concert at the city's most prestigious concert hall. The audience included music critics, professional musicians, wealthy patrons, and dozens of her former cleaning colleagues who had been given free tickets. As Maria walked onto the stage in her elegant black dress, she saw many familiar faces in the crowd. Dr. Winters was in the front row, beaming with pride. Robert Chen from the symphony orchestra was there with several of his musicians. Jennifer Walsh from the music magazine was taking notes for her follow-up story, but the faces that mattered most to Maria were in the third row. Sophia and Diego, her children, watching their mother with eyes full of love and pride. As Maria sat down at the grand piano, she thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment, from the scared cleaning lady who had been afraid to be seen, to the confident artist who was about to share her gift with hundreds of people. She placed her hands on the keys and began to play. The first piece was Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor, the same piece that had changed everything that night 3 months ago. But this time she played it even better. This time she played it as a free woman, an artist who had found her place in the world. And in the back of the concert hall, mostly hidden in the shadows, Richard Blackstone sat alone. He had come to hear the woman he had tried to humiliate, the woman who had taught him the hardest lesson of his life. As he listened to Maria's beautiful music, Richard finally understood what he had lost that night. It wasn't just his reputation or his social standing. He had lost the chance to be part of something beautiful, something that could have made him a better person. But for Maria Santos, the former cleaning lady who had never forgotten her dreams, everything beautiful was just beginning.